Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending Queens Borough President Melinda Katz's 2018 State of the Borough Address. Please rise for the presentation of the colors by the FDNY Ceremonial Unit. Please remain standing as we're led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Ms. Fatia Ayat, a first grade student at PS 16 in Corona.
Good morning. Now I'd like all of you to say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And now, please join with Wendy Lynn, a student at the Macaulay School of Honors at the City University of New York, as she sings our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that a flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you. You may now retire the colors. You may all now please be seated, and let's give a warm round of applause to Mr. Gideon Frankel, principal of the Frank Sinatra School of the Arts.
Good morning, distinguished guests and community leaders. It is my honor to welcome you to Frank Sinatra School of the Arts and the Tony Bennett Concert Hall. Thank you, Queensborough President Katxz, for choosing our school to host your address. Given the Borough President's deep and close family connection to the development of arts in Queens, it is so fitting that she has selected our school to speak to all of us today. In 1999, Tony Bennett and his wife Susan Benedetto were inspired to start a public high school for the young student artists of New York City. They dreamt of a school that would integrate the arts with rigorous academics, require a commitment to community service, and help students cultivate a lifelong love and dedication to their artistic passions. Committed to founding a public arts high school open to all city students, Tony and Susan partnered with the New York City Department of Education and local leaders, some of whom are here today. Two very special partners, in addition to then and late Queensborough President Helen Marshall, were Peter Vallone Sr. and George Kaufman. Through this public service and the private sector respectively, they were instrumental in the creation and development of our school. In 2001, we opened our doors in temporary quarters for 250 students. With the help of many friends and supporters, in 2009, we moved into our extraordinary permanent new home here in Tony's cherished hometown of Astoria, Queens. Being part of the Kaufman Astoria Studios universe is incredibly special for our school. Thank you, KAS President Hal Rosenbluth, for your continued support. Today, we are proud to serve 850 students studying 6 arts disciplines. We are also thankful to be receiving ongoing support from Exploring the Arts, the nonprofit organization founded by Tony and Susan, which helps provide funding for our school's arts programs, as well as internship and scholarship opportunities for our students. Just as our school has grown, so has Tony and Susan's foundation. Our school was their first in 2001, and today they partner with 38 schools in New York City and Los Angeles, helping to build arts programs for thousands of typically underserved high school students. I share our story because it is a great example of what can happen when notable artists, elected officials, and local community leaders come together to support a vision that can change lives. Today we have hundreds of graduates who grew up right here in Queens, just like Tony, going on to college and conservatory to study their art form and pursue careers in the arts, both on stage and behind the scenes. As a product of New York City Public Schools myself, I know firsthand the difference that a strong public education makes in the lives of students and their families. We are grateful to have such a vibrant and diverse school in one of the most vibrant and diverse places on the planet, the Borough of Queens. Thank you, Queensborough President Katxz, for all you do to support strong public schools in our borough, and for all your support of arts education and our school over the years. And thank all of you for being here today.
And now, please give a warm Queens welcome to Deputy Borough President Melva Miller.
Good morning, everyone. I am so honored to join you all here this morning for Borough President Melinda Katz's 2018 State of the Borough Address. Woo! Can we get a round of applause for that? All right, so before we introduce the Borough President, I am here to acknowledge some of our colleagues and partners in government. In the House, we have Congressman Gregory Meeks. We have Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. We have Senator Leroy Comrie. Senator Joseph Adabo Jr. Speaker Pro Tem Jeffron Aubrey. Assembly Member David Weprin. Assembly Member Nili Rosick. Assembly Member Alicia Heineman. Sorry. Council Member Paul Vallone. One of our newest council members, but no stranger to Queens, Francisco Moya. Council Member Costa Constantinides. Yeah, I knew I blew that up. I messed that up, right? Sorry, Costa. Council Member Barry Grodenchik. Councilmember Rory Lansman, Councilmember Daniel Drum, whose district we're in, Councilmember Jimmy Van Bramer, another newest councilmember to Queens, but no stranger, Councilmember Adrian Adams, Councilmember Karen Kozowitz, the third newest council member to Queens, no stranger, Councilmember Robert Holden, and my council member, Councilmember Donovan Richards. We also have SCA Commissioner Lorraine Grillo with us today, our New York City Parks Commissioner, Mitchell Silver, Deputy Commissioner Annabelle Palmer, Deputy Commissioner Jim Gennaro, our Queens Building Commissioner Derek Lee, the Executive Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Rick Cotton, President and CEO of Queens Library, Dennis Walcott, and we have City Clerk Mike McSweeney. Now, I'd like you all to join us in welcoming a very special guest. We have someone who fights for all Americans across this nation, but who represents us here in New York State extremely well. We have the Minority Leader in the U.S. Senate, Senator Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. It's great to be here for Melinda and all of you in this great borough of Queens. And I just want to say to you all what a wonderful day this is to hear Melinda give her State of the Borough address. It's a wonderful day in a whole lot of ways, and I'm going to mention a few because there are lots of things to think of. First, it's a great day for her. She just won re-election. She was sworn in, she told me, at a diner. A great Queens place to be sworn in at. And, but this is her second term. And you know, Melinda, I've known her for many, many years. I became a congressman in 1981, but Queens was added into my district in 1992. And I had my office on Yellowstone Boulevard. I shared it with a few others, and Melinda was there working so hard for the community in her area. She cared about it. She's a very, very bright woman. She's from here. She went to 144, Russell Sage, and Hillcrest. She graduated summa cum laude from the University of Massachusetts, and she could have done anything. She could have gone to one of these law firms, made a fortune, but she always cared about Queens, where she came from. And hence, she worked hard in the community and then was elected to the 28th Assembly District, which was Forest Hills, Rego Park, Glendale, Middle Village. I had represented a lot of that area as Congress member. One of my proudest moments was as a Democrat winning Glendale back in the 90s. When she was in the Assembly, she really cared about so many different issues. She was one of the leaders in the fights for health care, for women and women's access to health care. She helped prosecutors go after child abuse. She had an amazing record. She then went to the City Council. Her record was similarly great with the Committee on Land Use and helping change the waterfront in so many areas. And so she became borough president, elected in 2013, and was overwhelmingly elected in 2017. So we can say this is a great day for Melinda, because she got here. No one put a silver spoon in her mouth, plucked her out of nowhere and said, put you in this high, important position. She got here the old-fashioned way. She earned it. Well, her parents are not here today. Her kids are not here today, Carter and Hunter. Some of her relatives are, but it's also a great day for the family, the greater Katxz family. When something like this happens, you know, our families have our backs all the time, and our families put up with us. in these jobs. I'll never forget the day. My daughter was 5, 5th-year-old birthday party. We had this nice little party. I think we had a clown or something. But I got a call in the middle of the birthday party. It was a cold, cold March day. A local pastor. Well, we have our Easter pageant tonight, but the church door is locked. Con Edison has shut off the electricity. We can't get in. What do we do? I said, I don't know. Let me come over there. I called up, brought a Con Ed man over there. It took about 3 hours to negotiate. Church was opened up. All the people, many of them senior citizens, lined up. They get in there, and they get to see their Easter pageant. But I missed my daughter's 5th birthday. She's now 28. She reminds me of it regularly. But our families also have our backs. Now, I was talking to a fella a little while back. You know, I sort of vaguely recognized him. And my wife is pulling at my suit jacket. What are you doing, dear? I'm talking to the man. She says, you don't remember him? I said, no. He insulted you 15 years ago. So our families are there, and it's a great day for the greater Katxz family, even those who are not here today. It's a great day for Queens. This is an amazing borough. I just love Queens. My parents live here. It is so diverse. It represents the best of America. It represents immigrants, and we are telling President Trump and all of them, don't pick on immigrants. They are the greatest part of America. They are our future. And the bigotry and the anti-immigrant sentiment that comes out of the Trump administration and too many of the Republicans in the House and Senate is nothing short of despicable. But Queens represents what America's all about. So many different people of so many different groups, many of them not born here, all climbing that ladder to provide a decent life for themselves, their families. Queens needs services. It needs good schools. It needs safe streets. It needs good parks. It needs good transportation. And so to have someone like Melinda, who knows all these things so well, the ferry service that she established, what a great thing it has been along the Queens waterfront. So many different things that Queens needs. And she is so capable of providing these things. So this is not only a great day for Melinda and her family, it's a great day for this wonderful, grand, filled with immigrant borough of Queens, home of my parents. My parents moved from Brooklyn to Queens. What can I tell you? Can I digress and tell a quick story? Okay, about my parents. I like to tell stories. This is a happy day. This is a God is Good story for 2018. So my dad is 94, my mom is 89, praise God. Every New Year's Eve, they go out with a group called the Basement Club. When my father was a young man in his early 20s in Borough Park, you know, the houses were small, the apartments, they had a lot of kids. So every week, 20 young men put in 50 cents to rent a basement where they would hang out. And every year they went to New Year's Eve dinner, the Basement Club and their spouses. And by now, many of them have passed on, some have moved to Florida, so there were only 3, but they went to their favorite restaurant, the Jolly Fisherman in Roslyn. The next morning, New Year's Day, my father gets severe stomach pain. This is not his usual indigestion. My mother calls me. She says, you know, when he gets indigestion, Abe, you ate too much pizza? You deserve indigestion. But this was much more serious pain. And they said, what should we do? My mom said, what should we do? I said, look, let's not go to the hospital today. It was, you remember, it was about 5 degrees out. The hospital emergency room was probably all filled with people recuperating from New Year's Eve, to put it kindly, drying out. So I said, let's wait a day. That night, 1 a.m., my mom calls, a little frantic. Dad fell in the bathroom. He hadn't eaten or drank all day, so he was weak. His head is bleeding. I said, put a towel there, Mom, see if it staunches the blood. It did. But I said, I'm coming. I'm canceling my schedule. I'm coming to pick you up. They live out in Glen Oaks, North Shore Towers. I said, I'm going to pick you up and take you to the hospital 7 a.m. tomorrow. We do. What is the stomach pain? Air is pushed up against his diaphragm, and it was hurting him badly. What caused it? He swallowed a 4-inch flounder bone at the Jolly Fisherman, and it perforated his small intestine, and all the gunk from the small intestine was coming out. Peritonitis, danger of sepsis. They put him under the knife for 2.5, 3 hours. Praise God, he is home today recuperating from that. But here, particularly for those of you who are pastors or priests or rabbis or imams here today, it's the God is good story. Because when I thought about it later, I said to myself, had he not fallen, my mom would have called me up the next morning. She would have said, he still has the pain. I might well have said, let's wait another day, and he'd be gone. So God works in beautiful and mysterious ways, and my dad is on the road to recovery. So that's my family story about my Queen's parents. Anyway, finishing, which I always do at these ceremonies where we install or hear a State of the Union. This is not only a great day for Melinda and her family and this great borough, it's a great day for the United States because it represents the peaceful passing of the torch of power. With all the trouble we have in this country right now and how we have to fight to put it back on a good track, we still have that amazing moment every November. It's a cold November night. People line up. They're tired. They get off the bus or train. They want to go home, make dinner for the kids, put on their favorite TV show, sit in their favorite chair. But they line up in quiet dignity at the polling place, wait their turn, cast their ballot. And the next morning, no matter the outcome, we abide by the decision. It's been happening for over 200 years, and it's an amazing, amazing thing. We're the only country that can talk about that. And so we're grateful for that, despite the difficulty of the times. It didn't have to be that way. And I'll conclude with the story I like to tell. The day after the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, and that Constitution wasn't perfect. You know, when they first wrote the Constitution, you know who could vote? White, male, Protestant property owners. How many of you could have voted then? Raise your hands. Do we have any white, male, Protestant property owners in the room? So the Constitution wasn't perfect. But Ben Franklin was sitting in the coffee shop, in a coffee house. They didn't have Starbucks in those days. They called it a coffee house. And one of the leading matrons of Philadelphia came over to him and said, Dr. Franklin, what have you gentlemen created in there, Constitution Hall? He rifled back, Madam, we have created a republic, if you can keep it. Now, what did he mean by that? Well, the historians tell us it wasn't what we thought. Should there be a House and a Senate? Should the president have term limits? What about a Supreme Court? No. It was about two things they worried about the most. First, they worried about who would put themselves forward and win for public office. They worried that the people who might be elected would put themselves first, ahead of their community, ahead of their constituency, maybe for money, maybe for power, maybe for ego. They called them in those days scoundrels. I think we call them that today, too. The other thing they worried about is who would participate in this newfangled thing they had created, a democracy. They knew human nature. They knew people were very, very busy with their lives, with their jobs, with their families, with the ups and downs of life that God visits on every one of us. Would they participate? Well, let's look at this beautiful school auditorium this morning. First, who have we elected? Certainly not a scoundrel. Not even someone who they might call in Howard Beach, Metz-a-Metz. We have elected one of our best. And are the people participating? Well, this room on this cold January morning where people are so busy is filled with people of every background and race and creed and religion and color and gender and sexual orientation. Some who supported Melinda, most who supported Melinda, maybe some who didn't. people involved and engaged in all the different various activities of life, civic and education, and veterans, and you name it, little leagues in our communities. So yes, the people are participating. So if Benjamin Franklin were looking down on this auditorium this morning, he'd smile. This is the democracy the Founding Fathers wanted. So in conclusion, God bless Melinda, who I must note is wearing black in solidarity with the Me Too movement that we will see on the floor of the Congress during the State of the Union. So God bless Melinda. God bless her whole family. God bless this great borough of Queens, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, everybody, and a great 2018 to Queens and to all of you.
We want to, before he leaves, thank Senator Chuck Schumer, who truly is the right guy at the right time, at the right place in Washington, protecting us. Now, a quick note before I begin. Many of you know that I had ACL reconstruction surgery just a few weeks ago. So as I deliver my 4th State of the Borough address, we're going to keep this right here in case we need it. And I might. It's also the reason, by the way, that I've tried to keep this speech down to 30 minutes. You're welcome. First, please do me a big favor. Help me thank, on behalf of Melville Miller, the Deputy Borough President, and Jay Bond, the Chief of Staff, my entire office for the work today, especially Sharon Lee, who really put this entire thing together with everybody. It ain't easy. We want to thank Principal Gideon Frankel for his incredible staff and for hosting us this morning. This school consistently ranks among the top performing arts high schools in the city of New York and in the nation. And I'm honored to deliver this annual address right here from the famed Tony Bennett Concert Hall. We love Tony, right? Love Tony Bennett. He's done a lot for this borough. I'd like to extend a special thanks to our sole sponsor this morning, JetBlue. Let's give our hometown airline a big round of applause. We thank the FDNY Color Guard as well for the presentation of colors. We also welcome Chief Baggett here from the FDNY. But it's been more than a year since New York City lost one of its bravest in the line of duty. Firefighter William Tolley of Ladder 135, Engine 286. He was a well-loved 14-year veteran killed in the line of duty while fighting a fire at Ridgewood apartment building. Please join me in a moment of silence as we remember and honor firefighter Tolley for his tremendous sacrifice. We're joined today by so many distinguished people, including elected officials, commissioners, business leaders, civic leaders. Our own chiefs, NYPD Chief Holmes and Chief Borough, are also here. We want to thank them for their service. But we also want to welcome 3 of our Queens giants here in this great borough. Our own District Attorney, Judge Richard Brown, always a friend. Former City Council Speaker Peter Vallone Sr. And I would like to give a personal welcome, as always, to a great friend and mentor, former Borough President Claire Schulman. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my colleague in government as a borough president of the Bronx, Ruben Diaz Jr. I know you're already acknowledged, but all right, we got it. I know our other elected officials were already recognized, but I truly need everyone to understand that all we have done in this borough could never have been accomplished without the tremendous partnerships that we all share. It's hard to thank, all the electeds individually during a speech like this. But to the electeds, please know that I value our partnerships every single day. Thank you so much for the work we've done together. I want to especially thank the community board chairs, the district managers, and the community board members who all continue to do an extraordinary and often thankless job for the people of Queens. To serve on a community board, it's a significant commitment of time and of energy. Let's thank them for their service, because it's not easy. And in my first term, we made a concerted effort to move the community boards towards a healthier balance between long-time experience, which, by the way, is why we shouldn't have term limits for community boards, and fresh perspectives. Over 30% of all my appointments in the last 4 years are new. That's 249 individuals who began serving for the first time ever on a community board, and to you, I give a very special welcome here this morning. Thank you. Thank you also to the strong young women who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance and singing the national anthem this morning. I may never sing the national anthem again after hearing her. We want to thank the young people that were here, like Fatia Ayat and Wendy Lin. They represent so much. Let's give them a round of applause. Come on. You really were amazing, both of you. They represent so much of what is good in Queens, the hopes of all the families, for the very best opportunities and the very best future for our children, where the significance of where we're from is far outweighed by our determination and our dreams for where we want to go. Where even though we may celebrate our trademark diversity of now over 200 languages and 190 countries, and despite indefensible comments to the contrary, we also respect and help maintain one another's dignity, because we know that at our core, we have so much more in common than we do different. Queens is 2.3 million people, nearly half of whom were born abroad. I stood before you here 1 year ago on the wake of an inauguration of a new administration in the White House. 1 year ago, despite tremendous uncertainties and fears about the future, especially after shocking executive orders out of the gate, we tried to give the benefit of the doubt. 1 year ago, I unequivocally assured all those who chose to put faith in our borough that Queens has your back. But this past year has challenged every single person in this nation to reevaluate what it truly means to be an American and what that means to us individually. Whether we value the legitimacy of a woman's experiences and believe her for speaking truth to power and against what he said. Whether we oppose and speak out against federal agents who show up unannounced at our public schools, at our courthouses, and at our hospitals. Whether we stand together in unity not only to denounce hate in all of its forms when it's easy, but also to draw the line with legal consequences against the actions of hate. whether we defend dreamers from unjust deportations, because they are our family's children. They're our neighbors' children, and they're our children. The 21,000 DACA-eligible individuals in Queens grew up as American as my own kids, and they asked for nothing more than to be law-abiding citizens in the only country that they know to be their home. And whether as Americans we resist the rapid spread of fear, whether we still seek out the truth, and whether we exercise local power against increasingly authoritarian policies, and whether we vote. It is more important than ever to be counted. Whether it's on election days at the polls or in an upcoming 2020 United States Census. Another census undercount in New York? It's not an impossibility. But we have so much at stake here in Queens. Federal resources for infrastructure, for health services, for our schools, representation by our local elected officials. As such, I will convene a committee this year comprised of leadership from the borough's diverse communities across faiths, across civics, races, genders, and cultures. It will be called the Queens Complete Count Committee. And it will be charged with strategizing and maximizing participation in the census count in 2020, because if we want our fair share, we can't afford to just be reactive. We must be proactive, and we must be counted. It was my deep honor to serve as president of this great borough for the past 4 years. Together, working with many of you, we shared many great achievements in my first term. Public confidence in the Queens Library is now restored thanks to the reforms through best practice governance measures and ensuring fiscal accountability. Long-delayed capital projects, they were brought on track and even completed, including the libraries in Queensboro Hill, Elmhurst, and Kew Gardens Hills. The revitalization and smart growth of downtown Jamaica is well underway, thanks to millions and millions of dollars through the Jamaica Now Action Plan and from Governor Cuomo's Downtown Revitalization Initiative. Full recovery from Superstorm Sandy is finally within reach. By this June, 3,600 Queens residents affected by the October 2012 superstorm, they will all return home. And the community is more resilient than ever with a fully restored boardwalk along Rockaway Beach. We've seen an 8.8% increase in jobs since 2013. We hosted 50 job fairs at Borough Hall in my first term, connecting over 1,100 job seekers to jobs. The long-awaited citywide ferry service, the one that everyone said could never be done, is now done. Queens has 4 ferry stops along its waterfront, and for $2.75, you can get to Astoria, Long Island City, and even the famous beaches of the Rockaways. That's if you want to go to Manhattan. Dozens of people with physical disabilities have received brand new high-tech wheelchairs through Wheelchairs Charities, Inc. That offers precious mobility to those who are wheelchair-bound, all thanks to the tremendous generosity of people like Hank Carter, a Queens native and Bronx Star recipient from the Vietnam War. Veterans no longer have to travel to downtown Manhattan for their benefits, thanks to the opening at Queensboro Hall of the very first satellite office of the New York City Department of Veterans Affairs. The first Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Queens, it's now fully funded, as I promised a decade ago, with completed designs. Construction will begin this year in Elmhurst Park, and Queens will pay tribute deserved to those soldiers who fought in the Vietnam War. Pre-K is now universal everywhere in the city of New York. This was a tremendous deliverable by Mayor de Blasio, and I was so pleased to work closely with him and his staff to help mushroom enrollment in Queens from 3,600 kids in pre-K in Queens in 2013 to 20,000 kids today in the borough of Queens. Under my youth program launched last year, 277 civic-minded volunteers from a dozen schools collectively planted over 1,200 flowers and cleared out over 3,000 pounds of leaves and garbage, beautifying our neighborhood streets and parks throughout the borough. Cleaning up and getting our kids on the right track for community service, that's a win-win. 77 classroom trailers were successfully removed from Queens schools. That is 38% removed for good, bringing the students into real permanent buildings alongside the rest of their schoolmates. And Katxz Cradles, I love that, Katxz Cradles, get it? I'm trying up here. Katxz Cradles expanded the citywide Safe Sleep Initiative to non-public hospitals in partnership with First Lady Shirley McCray. In addition to the public hospitals, the free portable cribs are now available at St. John's Episcopal Hospital in Far Rockaway, Jamaica Hospital Medical Center, and Flushing Hospital Medical Center. And throughout this borough, we now have Know Your Rights and Resource fairs available. Particularly in light of the increasing climate of fear, we are tripling our expense budget for these workshops to enhance support for the organizations already stretched thin and equip more communities with the tools to exercise their rights and their resources. Also in my first term, Queens tourism, it's surged. In 2016 alone, international and domestic tourists spent $8.5 billion in Queens, second only to Manhattan. That generated over $1 billion in tax revenues for the city and for the state. The film, television, production industry, which creates thousands of jobs and economic activity, has been a huge driver of tourism and the economy. The city's tax incentive program for the industry, in turn, has attracted substantial investment toward building new stages and expanding capacities at major studios like Kaufman Astoria right across the street and Silver Cup Studio right down the block. The iconic New York State Pavilion is now saved. We brought it back from the dead. We recovered its original brilliance. I did not pick it out. The original brilliance of American cheese yellow. And we have secured $16 million in public funds towards the full restoration of this historic architecture marvel. And the annual Katxz concert series now brings free outdoor music to neighborhood parks across the borough, including the Only in Queens Summer Festival that brought headliners like R&B singer Genuine and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer George Clinton, that was amazing, to Flushing Meadow Coronas Park. Those were some great achievements from all of us in the first term. But as part of those achievements just listed, one of the distinct privileges of this job is allocating public funds across collective priorities for all of our futures. Because after all, come on, if it's good for family, it's good for... In 2018, we will begin to see the fruits of our investments made in recent years. I fully expect more groundbreakings and more ribbon cuttings on these investments. We'll continue keeping project managers and contractors on course, marking milestones when made, and unveiling the physical fruition of tax dollar investments into our future. In my first term, we allocated nearly $300 million for capital projects throughout Queens. So naturally, a third of that money went into our schools and into our libraries. $41 million of that into 354 Queens schools across K through 12 throughout the borough. In fact, in the last 4 years, I've allocated funds to upgrade technology in every single elementary and junior high school in the borough of Queens. An additional $23 million for new construction upgrades at the 5 CUNY institutions based right here in Queens, and another $46 million for renovations and expansions across 20 of our neighborhood libraries. Another third of that total capital, $100 million, went to 57 parks. Thanks to Commissioner Silver's ambitious 3-year deadline for each capital project, we can expect to unveil upgrades at dozens of our treasured parks throughout the borough. And that includes Big Bush Park, Casina Corridor Park, Laurelton Playground, Morrow Playground, Roy Wilkins Park, and just so many more. Commissioner Silver is here. Commissioner Silver, we thank you for your work on our city. The remaining 1/3 of our capital went to various additional priorities that serve our great city. $25 million into capital upgrades at cultural institutions, $22 million into our hospitals and our health centers, especially to increase access to culturally competent primary care services in medically served, underserved areas. The largest awards went to community-based healthcare facilities, including the expansion of the Joe Adabo Family Health Center in Auburn and the brand new construction of Charles B. Wang in downtown Flushing. $17 million into NYCHA and HPD projects, including housing for seniors and LGBT homeless youth, DV survivors, and low-income single mothers. And $8 million into police department and fire departments, including upgrades to our firehouses, who, by the way, most of them have been upgraded in over 100 years, Argus security cameras throughout the borough, and a new mobile command center, finally substation in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park for the police department. So with all these investments, what we've actually been doing in Queens is setting a roadmap and building the infrastructure for the future, where we want the borough to be by the beginning of the next generation, by at least 2030. Queens is the borough of growth and the borough of families. And with that, we must make sure that we have the infrastructure to support our families. The most critical for the infrastructure is the future of our schools. In fact, we have over 238,000 students enrolled in our schools. That's larger than the entire population of Newark, of Des Moines, and even of Buffalo. Bursting at the seams are elementary schools. They're at 116% capacity. Our high schools are at 113% capacity. The most overcrowded high school in the city of New York, Francis Lewis High School in Fresh Meadows. It is greater than 200% of its maximum capacity. And our schools as a whole, borough by borough, are also the most overcrowded in the city of New York. Most of the boroughs are below capacity, but we exceed capacity at 108% on the average. And to be frank, Our schools haven't kept up with the growth of our families. People want to come here. While we are the most overcrowded, we are also the most underfunded. Queens received the lowest amount of funding per pupil than any other borough. So we have the most kids and we get the least amount per kid. To stay competitive and to meet the growing demand, we have been busy building schools. And the School Construction Authority, whose head, Lorraine Grillo, is here with us today. Hi, Lorraine. Hi, Lorraine. Recently dedicated over $1.9 billion, the largest capital investment among the 5 boroughs, to create 18,632 additional new school seats here by 2020. We need to thank Lorraine Grillo and the SCA for the great work that they have done. But even with the new seats, the borough with the largest landmass will still remain the only borough with overcapacity, especially in our elementary and our high schools. And so to meet the needs and keep up with this great growth, Queens must have a greater share of the city's budget for our schools. There should be more parity in per pupil spending across the city by increasing our share. And we'll be working with the administration to get even more than the 18,632 seats already heading our way. Because as we look up where we will be and where we want to be by 2030, it's clear that we need more, and it's clear that our families deserve more. Queens is focused on building the foundation and infrastructure for the opportunities of tomorrow. That includes adequate amount of school seats, but also in the borough of growth, that includes technology. Because tech jobs, on the average, they pay more and are growing at a faster clip than jobs citywide. But in tech jobs growth, Queens has lagged behind other New York innovation districts with 10% growth compared to 28% growth citywide. One of the biggest potentials for New York's future tech hub is here in Western Queens, a dynamic, mixed-use community where workers can live and ideas can synergize and businesses can thrive. It's already helped make New York City's bid for Amazon even more competitive and part of the top 20 cities under consideration for the major online retailers' new headquarters for Amazon. Long Island City's skyline is practically unrecognizable from a decade ago as cranes scape the sky. Phase 1 of Cornell Tech's $2 billion campus on Roosevelt Island opened just last fall. New apartments are far outpacing other markets with over 14,000 new residential units in the past 10 years, and another 19,000 are in the pipeline. Emerging commercial projects are beginning to catch up with our residential boom, and they're transforming former warehouses into creative workspaces amidst rising multi-million square feet of office hubs. With strong institutional anchors like JetBlue and CUNY Law and LaGuardia Community College, a wealth of local talent right here, and rapidly growing residential population, we have the best inherent assets to foster innovation. But it's not just about the growth for the sake of growth. And it is about equitably growing the share of jobs. And that includes training locally. And it includes employing locally. So 18 months ago, I commissioned a study, the Western Queens Strategic Plan, to create the city's leading tech ecosystem, and ultimately jobs. It's a roadmap for fostering equitable growth. It means highly attractive incentives for tech, new space ranging between 375,000 and 675,000 square feet, and 4,500 new tech jobs. By leveraging Western Queens' ample space for growth and projected development, and by working closely with our great partners for our future like EDC, the Economic Development Corp., we are steering our borough into the competitive lane for the digital age. 10 years ago, most of our families dreamed of moving out to Long Island. Some even dreamed of moving out to Jersey. Maybe not. But today, the future is not in the suburbs. The future is in Queens. And while preserving our neighborhoods and our communities, we're leading the way in the city of New York. The future that we're creating here in Queens is one of urban families for families, and our planning and investments reflect that vision. The culmination of our efforts will be shown within the next few years. But to really see the returns on our public investments and their long-term impacts, we need to look out beyond today. So where will we be in 2030? First of all, when I'm 64, come on, I had to do it. Y'all would have been disappointed in me otherwise. First of all, when I'm 64 in 2030, our beloved Mets have clinched their 6th World Series championship. Congressman Meeks and I are going to the game. Okay, let's put dreaming aside. But I have faith, I just want you to know. If I had my way, 2030, I'd like Queens to be the first borough to end homelessness amongst veterans. With nearly 50,000 veterans, more vets call Queens home than any other borough, and too many of them are still in need of housing. By 2030, I'd also like to see health care available for every single veteran, and this includes mental health services, and I'd like them to be treated free of charge at any New York hospital that receives public funding, regardless of insurance coverage. By 2030, I'd like to see all NYCHA housing have a percentage of units specifically set aside for grandparents who are the sole caretaker of their grandchildren. By 2030, I'd like to see a professional branded tourism campaign for Queens run by an independent marketing team with NYC & Company. Queens has increasingly become the global destination for entertainment, culture, and tourism. Our identity is unique, and the international campaign would be charged with sharing our story around the world to boost tourism here to unprecedented levels. But that's just some of my ideas, if I had my way. But they're the right things to do. But the reality of what we will see, the seeds of investments and efforts we have planted over the past 4 years that will yield a stronger infrastructure and future for our growing families, the reality of what we will actually see by 2030 is even more amazing. Picture what's ahead. By 2030, because of our investments, temporary classroom units are now relics of the past. All remaining 124 units have been successfully removed, and Queens schools are officially trailer-free. But for the record, we saved 2 of them for nostalgia. We placed one of them at the Queens Museum and the other one right next to the old 7 train in front of Borough Hall. By 2030, there is free free 3K for every toddler, not just in Queens, but citywide. It is universal, it is high quality, and it has changed the game for millions of working families in the city of New York. By 2030, Queens libraries have several expanded, renovated, or even brand new libraries now open to the public, including the ones in Hunter Point South, Rego Park, Corona, Laurelton, Auburn, Glendale, South Hollis, and Far Rockaway. They'll all be open in 2030, and way before that, they are high-tech anchors for the growing families of our communities. By 2030, we have thousands of affordable housing units specifically set aside for our seniors. They're staying independent, they're raising their grandchildren, and remaining active in our communities and those communities that they've known for decades. By 2030, that Queens Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Elmhurst Park that we talked about, we're commemorating the 10th anniversary of its opening. By 2030, the new NYPD 116th precinct is up, fully operational, better serving the families of Rosedale, Laurelton, and Springfield Gardens, and we're all going to be at the ribbon cutting. By 2030, there is one continuous protected bike lane throughout Queens as part of a borough-wide bike plan that enhances safety for all pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists on our roads. And that allows greater car-free access between communities. By 2030, the Queens Rail, previously known as the LIRR's Lower Montauk branch, is now activated commuter line that runs 8.5 miles from Jamaica through Maspeth all the way to Long Island City. And by 2030, the Long Island Railroad stations in Elmhurst, Long Island City, and Willets Point are now fully operational and reliable for daily commuters. A reliable MTA. By 2030, the Willets Point Transit Hub features a modern 3-station complex with seamless transfers between the 7-train Long Island Railroad and the air train to LaGuardia Airport. By 2030, under the leadership of Rick Cotton, Executive Director of the Port Authority, who's here with us today, the $8 billion overhaul of LaGuardia Airport is long complete, with one centralized cohesive terminal, 3,200 parking spots in the West Parking Garage, and a 30-minute train ride to Midtown Manhattan. By 2030, even the Citywide Ferry stops at LaGuardia Airport. I'm dreaming a little bit. By 2030, the $10 billion overhaul of JFK Airport is also complete, with one unified, interconnected layout, a retro world-class TWA hotel, and a one-seat ride from Manhattan to JFK. And best of all, no more traffic. By 2030, Willets Point is now home to tens of thousands of housing units. Wait for it, the best part, not 20, not 30, not 50, but 100% of the housing will be affordable on that 61-acre piece of land. And, by the way, dreaming again, but hopefully, it is funded by the professional soccer stadium at Willets Point, and we're getting ready to host the 2034 World Cup. By 2030, the Rockaways is where everyone wants to be, with a reconstructed Bayswater Park, a fully restored Sunset Park, Cove Park, and at Beach 88th Street, it is more resilient than ever before. By 2030, downtown Far Rockaway is now a vibrant, reinvigorated village. And by 2030, Sunnyside Yards, we'll still be talking about it. I'm sorry to EDC, but it's been a while, over generations of mayors. By 2030, the New York State Pavilion is an illuminated, fully restored structure, and it features an open-air performance space under the tent of tomorrow. And when it's lit, every night, the brilliance from the observation towers is visible from miles away. And in 2030, it is an emblematic sign of just how far the world's borough has come. My parents, just like so many, many others today from around the world, they chose to make Queens the place where they would start and that they would raise their family. My parents, just like Tony Bennett, chose to make Queens the place where they would devote their entire lives, and they would expand music and culture and performing arts. And my mom and dad, just like many of you, chose to make Queens the place that they call home. Because even in the early 50s, when my parents first came to Jackson Heights and then they settled in Forest Hills, they recognized the tremendous potential of Queens and all the gifts it had to offer the city, the state, and the country. And when I put Carter and Hunter to bed every night in the very same bedroom that I grew up in, I am confident that we are building here something better. We're building something stronger, brighter, for the future generations that we will probably never meet. Today, the narrative of Manhattan and Brooklyn as being the economic engines leading New York, that's changed. Queens has changed that narrative. We've changed it with our innovation. We've changed it with our ambition, our drive, our grit, and we've changed it with just a little bit of Queens attitude. It's been an extraordinary honor to serve the people of this great city for over 2 decades now. I am humbled by the opportunities afforded me to help shepherd this great borough through my first and now my second term. Together, we've brought Queens so far, and so much more remains to be done. But with a shared vision, our vision, New York's greatest potential opportunities, and our future, they're all here. And in 2030, when I'm 64, we'll be able to look back fondly to today and how together we all built our tomorrow. Thank you.